The Beast of Tuksa, written by Trent Kanuga and Elizabeth Moon. Chapter 8. The Floodgate. Go, go, go! I hear Olaf yelling from behind me as Bartol led the pack. My lungs ached and my heart felt like it was trying to escape my chest. My legs, they felt like piles of bricks on fire, heavy and burning. Olaf lashed furiously as he tore through the thicket of dead branches and vines that populated the corridors of the maze. He vaulted over the wet mossy stones, with objects flying out of his rucksack. I scamper and slide and bounce off of everything to try to avoid them. I was surprised he hadn't abandoned the whole thing altogether. Why would he even bring all that stuff? What good would those things be if we didn't survive? We could hear the mud smack and the wet pounding rhythm as the beast trailed just behind us. I could swear that I felt its warm flesh-eating breath down my neck. As we hit the intersection of the corridor, Bartol slid sideways and then gathered traction, veering right. Olaf snuffed out the flame of his torch as he slammed it into the rocks, then pushed himself off to make the sharp turn. Following their lead, I caught the sudden change in direction. The enormous beast, however, pounded into the wall at full speed, burying its head into the stones and thorns, the impact scattering debris. We both looked back without pausing and saw the beast jerk its head out and shake off the rubble, its many tails flailing about in the moonlight. Then it fixed its gaze upon us, its eyes glittering with a fury far more menacing than before. It belted out a roar, loud enough to shake the ground. Ignoring the pain, I gained so much speed I nearly lost them on the turns. "Laughed, Mao, laughed!" Olaf directed me into the cavern and through the narrow crack so small you'd barely notice it until you got really close. Olaf slid down the rubble passageway, through the lowered riverbed path, and into the narrowing cavern behind me. He squeezed into the tight passage between the stones in the cave, sucking in his stomach to inch through the narrower parts of the crack. It was big enough for Bartol and me, but it took some doing for him to get through. For the love of... He found himself stuck and unable to move forward. He quickly fumbled to unbuckle his pack and swing it out to his side, then try again. Within moments, the beast came shrieking behind, scratching into the crevice, trying to fit his head through, its breath like fire as it inhaled our scent. It was too large to follow us, but its claws tore into the stone and snagged a piece of the rucksack, trying to pull it out from Olaf's hands, growling through its gritted teeth. "Ah!" Olaf screamed, holding on to one side of the rope, the only thing that he was able to retain from his tug of war. He dropped his machete and wrapped both hands tightly around the rope. Planting one foot on the dirt and the other against the cave wall, he leveraged all of his weight backward. On the other side of the cavern, I was already almost out when I heard Olaf scream from behind me. I stopped in my tracks to glance back. "What are you doing?" Olaf cried out. "I said run!" But I don't run. I can't leave him behind. Instead, I watch helplessly as the beast's claws flung loose from the rucksack, sending Olaf flying through the fissure and landing on his backside hard, rope and sack on the ground in front of him. He scrambled to salvage his belongings from the shredded travel bag. Inches away, black claws sparked as they cut into the stone of the crevice. Snorting in contempt, the beast continued scrambling and snarling into the narrow corridor. After a while, he seemed to give up, backing away and pacing at the other side of the small opening. Olaf hustled to meet us and came to rest his arms on his knees, exhausted and panting to catch his breath. "What happened to all our stuff?" I asked. Olaf simply looked at the machete in his hand and the short scrap of rope that he was able to recover. "At least I salvaged a few things," he sighed. "I hope it'll be enough. What about you? Why'd you stop?" he asked breathlessly. I pointed ahead at what appeared to be an impassable series of protruding stones showered by an enormous seeping floodgate. The mechanism holding the whole structure together was rusted throughout and fastened with a rotted old rope that could still give out at any moment. It stood about 30 feet wide, crafted from solid metal and stone, weighing more than what he and I could ever move. Olaf stepped in for a closer look. Along the face of the gate, a slender ledge jutted out from the cliff wall, where the water had worn away the rocks every couple of feet, forming small platforms of wet, slick stone. "I think you made it mad. Maybe you should go back and apologize," I joked. "How can you joke around at a time like this? This is serious, Mao. We could have been killed," he yelled furiously. "Sheesh. I don't think I'll ever see him this mad." Not waiting for a response, he continued. "This way looks too dangerous. I can't even see the other side. Let's see what other options we got." Olaf paced as he gathered his thoughts. A grisly howl swept through the ravine, deep and heavy, reminding us of what was waiting for us if we went back. We had no choice but to move forward. We each glanced back at the cave, then back at each other, nodding in agreement. "Looks like we might not have a choice." That thing is still on our tail, and it won't be long before it figures out a way to get us, Olaf said as if reading my thoughts. He looked at the section of frayed rope he still held in his hand, then back at the ledge along the seeping floodgate. He tied up his belt and quickly tugged at the sturdy knot, then held the other end to me. Tie it tight, the way I taught you, remember? I nodded and fastened it. Bartol whimpered as Olaf tied the other end to the satchel on his strong, furry back. Not to worry, Barty. Ha! I gotcha. Olaf reassured him with a pat on his head and scratch behind his ears. Before he finished with the knot, I yelled out, I'll go first, and I leapt to the first stone. Mal, wait, he sounded exhausted. Slow down, boy. You're always running into danger head on. Each stone was only about 1.5 feet wide, barely the size of Olaf's feet, and covered in slippery moss. He had no choice but to follow us, as he took a wide step to the first stone after I moved on to the next. I looked down, but could only see the fall of water pouring into the foggy, misty blackness far below. Suddenly nauseous, I nearly lost my balance. Bartol made an unrecognizable noise and hopped to the first stone, staying close behind. Streams of water poured down along the wall between each stone, creating small waterfalls. We had to step sideways to make the leap between each of the platforms. There were flat stone sections of the wall we could use to correct our balance, but they were so covered in vines and moss that they weren't much help. I kept about 3 stones ahead, wobbling this way and that, but keeping my balance and kicking loose bits of the debris and clumps of moss. I think I can see the other side, I said excitedly. But as soon as I turned around again, Olaf called out, Mao, don't move a muscle. The beast had found its way around the crevice, caught up to us, and leapt down from high above the floodgate wall. He planted himself firmly on the opposite end of the narrow stone ledge, cutting off our only passable route across the ravine. Looking over the floodgate and along the wall, I wondered how he could have gotten around so quickly. Mao, Olaf's voice was surprisingly calm. Mao, just come on back, okay? He motioned for me, waving his fingers back to where he stood. But the beast had already begun staring me down. He stepped effortlessly, gracefully toward me, his massive paws crushing the narrow ledge of stones under its weight, and it paused as I stared back at Olaf. Then it let out a thunderous roar, causing me to stumble. I tried to catch my footing, but the rocks were too slick, and I fell right over the ledge. With a jerk, I slammed against the watery rock face, dangling at the waist by the rope attached to Olaf. Hold on, Mao, I got you! Olaf braced himself against the floodgate wall, wrapping his hands around the old moss-covered ropes tied to the mechanism. I desperately tried to get myself upright, and grabbed the rope with one hand while the other failed to get a grip on the slippery stones. The water poured down around me, blurring my vision. I had to keep my head looking down to stop from drowning. Every inch of me was drenched, the water weighing me down even more. Behind Olaf, Bartol was occupying the only remaining ledge. We were trapped. I watched helplessly, pummeled relentlessly by rushing streams of water pouring from the openings in the floodgate. Ahead of Olaf, the beast crossed in front of the floodgate, closing in on us. Then Olaf looked back at the old worn rope in his hand that held the floodgate mechanism and the counterweight on the other side. Mao, hold on just a little longer. I've got an idea. He wrapped his hand around the portion of the mechanism above his head and reached for his machete with his left. Hold on tight! Without hesitation, the beast lunged as soon as he saw the weapon. The machete tore into the old mossy rope as if through twisted wet noodles. Whip! The latch snapped from its hinges, followed by a loud clank from the mechanism behind the wall. In 1 second, the floodgate doors unlatched and flung open. The diverted river blasted through the open passage and into the ravine. The torrent was so powerful that it smashed into the beast, sweeping him off like an autumn leaf on a windy day, tossing it helplessly into the emptiness below. At the same time, the force had flung the 3 of us to the top of the floodgate wall in an instant, Olaf still holding onto the mossy rope as the counterweight fell. Olaf quickly slid the machete into the sheath at his side and grabbed the ledge behind the pulley. His gloved hand left him dangling from the metal frame. I swung below him, gripping onto his boot. Bartol dangled from the rope tied to his pack and swung out below us both. Phew! Everyone all right? Olaf called breathlessly down at us. Bartol whimpered in his response as he hung suspended in his hoist.